Hey everyone, welcome to the Slice of Construction podcast. I'm your host here, Taylor. Joining me today is Mike Powers, the co-founder and CEO at BuildVision. Mike, how's it going?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing well. Excited to have you here. Let's dive right into my maybe overused first question that I say quite a bit now. But you're walking down the street, you're in a sweatshirt, BuildVision's on it. Someone says, "Hey, what does BuildVision do?" What do you tell them?
Yeah, so BuildVision is a procurement network for commercial construction that connects contractors directly to manufacturers to source strategic pieces of equipment. So things like electrical gear, HVAC systems. It helps those contractors source, procure, and finance equipment in a streamlined process.
And what made you want to start this company in the first place?
Yeah, great question. So I've grown up in the construction space. So since I was like 12 years old, I was on a job site. My dad worked for Kone, which is a massive escalator company. So at 12 years old, I would go to the job site with him. So always loved the space. Went to school as a mechanical engineer. Worked at a mechanical subcontractor. Then after college, worked at Turner Construction, the largest general contractor in the country. And while I was there, worked at a group called Turner Logistics, now called Source Blue, which is Turner's procurement arm. So because Turner is so massive, they're able to strategically source these mechanical electrical pieces of equipment directly from manufacturers. So instead of the process of leveraging a sub or a manufacturer's rep to buy this, Turner will go directly to the manufacturer. So I spent about 2 years there. Really fell in love with like this idea of like helping owners get better pricing, ensuring the right component, and really help with lead times. And then I made the jump while I was at Turner. I started using a company called Building Connected, which is a bid management software. Uh, Started talking to the CEO Dustin about collaboration or enhancements in the product, and made the jump to the tech side. So started out as an account executive at Building Connected when we were about 100 to 200K in revenue, scaled that up to 12, 15 at acquisition by Autodesk, and then ran enterprise sales at Autodesk for 4 years. And the recurring theme while I was at Autodesk with all these companies that I was engaged with was they were asking like, hey, how do we create a procurement arm to source these pieces of equipment? How do we build something out similar to what Turner has? And after like the 30th general contractor asked about it, I decided to create BuildVision with that idea of like, hey, let's create a procurement network for commercial construction that helps all these different parties and kind of takes this transaction away from like an archaic process of paper and email and puts it into an application that gives everybody visibility in the process more clearly.
Super interesting. And I guess give us some of the early day challenges that you faced in getting to where you're at today in this point of the company.
Yeah. Yeah. We are really trying to like push for this idea of a new transaction. So everything really, really is based on like in the current model, the majority of construction is based project by project. That's where budget are. That's where like everyone's eyes are. And historically, that's where you see a lot of the SaaS models position themselves. So like a Procore model is charged by project, and Autodesk is charged by project. And that really like creates a lot of friction because it prevents large general contractors from leveraging their buying power. If you go to a large GC and ask them, how much money did they spend on mechanical equipment last year? Um, it's very hard for them to figure that out in a streamlined way. And in reality, they spend like 10 to 20% of their entire construction volume on that type of equipment. So a large GC that does 10 billion of commercial construction probably spends 1 to 2 billion just on mechanical electrical equipment. Um, so this kind of like educating the industry on like, hey, let's make this shift to look at it across the portfolio as opposed to projects is definitely a challenge that we're working through. And we really have to educate all these different parties on why doing this transaction in house as opposed to doing it by project is beneficial for them.
And you and I talked about something, Mike,
Yeah.
um, before we started recording that really got me interested, and I want to kind of continue on with that a little bit. You were talking
Yeah.
about how SaaS and construction essentially don't always maybe play nice, or it isn't always like having
Yeah.
a total SaaS solution. Why it only works for maybe a few companies. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? I probably butchered what your 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 phrase there, but like um I think our audience would be super interested because it does seem like a lot of people that go and say, all right, being a straight SaaS play in construction is where I want to go. Kind of give us maybe the other
Yeah.
side of why maybe that's not the best path.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you look at how a contractor makes money, like the numbers are massive for construction volume, but the fees are very, very small. So, for example, you look at, hey, I'm building a $400 million hospital. I might be able to charge like a 1 to 2% fee on that. That hospital project is 3 to 4 years long. And that fee is really just structured around like having a job site trailer on the job, paying for employees, and paying for any change orders. So like slapping an additional fee on top of that is very much a struggle. Historically, what general contractors have started doing is like they'll have like a tech fee built out into their submission or their proposal. But now owners are getting smart to that. Owners are like, why am I paying 3% for Procore for this GC while I also have a subscription myself? Um, and that just like has caused a lot of friction in the space. And my thesis is that like there really isn't room in construction for another $100 million a year ARR business because there's no money to be had. You go to a large general contractor and you say, hey, in order to hit $100 million in revenue as a SaaS product in construction, you need to have like the top 15, top 20 GCs paying you 7 figures. So go to those top 15, 20 GCs and ask like, hey, do you have another $1 million to spend on software? Every one of them will say no. There isn't money floating around, right? And this has been a drastic change over the last 10 years. Like a GC 10 years ago could charge 5 to 7% fees. But now with this increase in like insurance of anybody can really get a good insurance policy on construction, there's been a drastic decrease in fee structures. And now GCs are getting smart and trying to figure out like, hey, how do I actually make revenue? So if you look at a top 10 GC, they do a ton of construction volume, but the majority of their money is made through insurance, like SDI or CSIP, any type of self-perform. So they might do concrete, they might do drywall, and then starting to do the strategic procurement. So you're kind of making the shift where GCs are historically like, hey, we're managing projects, right? We're creating this getting access to all these different areas in construction, and now we're like trying to find avenues to create revenue. And that's kind of been like the foundational piece of like how we created BuildVision. And it's really around this idea that like we want to create a tool that helps the general contractor or the contractor make money. So if you don't make money using the platform, then there is no fee for you. And that thesis is like cherishing and tying to their success makes it a lot more easier and successful. So you're talking to a top 10 GC and say, hey, if we can create a 10, 15, $20 million revenue business for you using our platform, we want to share on the upside of that. And that story is a lot better because it gives them success of like, hey, I'm going to succeed if you succeed. And then you would tie that to the success of those executives at that company. So you're like, hey, if you're bringing 10, 20, $30 million of revenue extra into your company, what does that do for you? And that's what we're really trying to tie to the success of kind of both sides of that procurement network. And it's funny if I talked to like a CTO at a top 10 GC, and his position was if I had the savings that every software company that I use promised me, I would never have to build a building again. And just like thinking through that lens of like, hey, oh, we saved 10%, we saved 50%, we saved 100% on a project. Like that employee is still at the job site, right? Like you're still paying that employee, even if they're 10% more efficient, like they're still on the job site from 9 to 5. You're not like taking that employee off 10%. So I think there's has to be a different lens and perspective for construction and specifically for construction tech companies when you're going to market. It's like, how are you actually helping this person be successful? And how can you tie to that success?
Super. I love that take. I've never heard anyone explain it like that, but it makes total sense. And you do hear these CTOs talking about from these firms that they don't have the budget, and that kind of stems even
Yeah.
beyond construction, right? This is like a very
Yeah.
real thing that we're facing
Sure.
in business. Very interesting. Can we talk a little bit
Yeah.
about? I want to say congratulations too, because it was announced a few months ago that you closed your seed round.
Yeah.
Maybe talk about some of the strategies and challenges that you faced in doing that, because this is not the best climate to raise in, right? So the fact that you did, kudos to you and the team. But I know our audience would love to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So in May, at the beginning of May, we successfully raised a $3 million seed round led by Crosslink Capital. Um, and, definitely was an aggressive market to go raise in. But again, it kind of ties back to like this thesis of like, as you're looking at the shoes of a venture capital, like they need outlier returns. So positioning a product, positioning a story, positioning a pricing model that's like can create those outlying returns is very, very important. So if we went to market to raise our seed round or even our pre-seed round saying like, oh, we're going to charge $1,000 a seat for our software, it would have been a brick wall after brick wall. But going in and saying our goal as a venture-backed company is to create this platform where we provide extreme outcomes for our customers, and that's the bet we're taking, makes that conversation a lot easier. And I was very lucky with like the team of investors that we've worked with so far. So our pre-seed round was led by a company called Euclid Ventures, first check-in company. One of the partners there, his name's Omar. He actually was the lead investor for the seed round of Building Connected back in like 2016. So I had a little bit of a connection there. So he led the pre-seed round, and then he was able to really just like provide a lot of introductions to seed round investors to kind of create that like that layup position. Like we weren't in market to raise a seed. VCs kind of preemptively approached us to raise the seed, and obviously like that's kind of the benefit of like having an interesting perspective in the market, having like a very like really good early design partners that we've worked with. Um, but it's like the VC market is always going to be very, very tough. But like that VC market has looked at construction and has seen a lot of companies kind of top out at 10, 15 million. And a 10, $15 million ARR company isn't returning the fund, right? Like Crossing Capital, their latest fund was like $400 million. And like, so you need to be an investment at a seed to be able to, the possible outcome of returning a fund. So what does that mean? Say you get 10, 15, 20% ownership targets, and they need to get a $400 million return on that. So just like thinking through those numbers, it makes it very, very hard if you're like not trying to like position the company to be $100 to $300 million a year revenue business.
And you have to think differently because, to your point, that's kind of been the norm in the space, right? A lot of companies get to that other point. So your
Yeah.
unique perspective, I'm sure, was welcoming. I would love to talk a little bit. Wouldn't be a podcast these days if the two letters AI do not come up. Talk us through kind of, I guess, debunk some of the myths and share some real examples of how
Yeah.
AI is currently transforming the construction space.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually last week we officially acquired our first company called SpecFrog, which is as the CEO would call it, a chat GPT for commercial construction. So we brought him onto the team. His name's Ben. He's actually from the commercial construction space, like myself, and really was trying to solve a problem around structured data. So we are definitely like leaning into AI in the sense we're leaning into it to help our workflows on the background, but not necessarily customer facing. And I say that because construction just got to the point where we've started to digitize things. So again, go back 10 years. My first job, I was literally in a job site trailer folding over 42-inch documents saying this document is outdated and redlining it with the pipe was in the wrong place. We spent the last 10 years with a lot of really cool tools to like put things into the cloud, right? And now we're finally at a point where things are in the cloud and they can start being actionable on. So if you go through the journey of like AI and chat GPT and what people are trying to drive towards is like construction is still behind on that process. Like there isn't a world where you're sitting at your computer desk and like a construction project can come down to you like a chat interface. It's just not how it works. Like steel beams can connect consistently, but that steel beam could be in the way of something that isn't on the drawings. Uh, so our perspective is like we want to leverage AI to make our tools in the background more efficient. So how do you compare uh, manufactured equipment across the design spec? So say the engineer is looking for 1,000-ton chiller, and the basic design for that chiller is a York unit. Our software can go through and pair it to the frame chiller, the Dyson chiller, or the carrier chiller. And we're leveraging everything from just basic data scraping and OCR recognition to starting to read product data manuals and ingest that information into a chat interface for our team to use. And then that output is then presented to the market. And that's the position that we've like aggressively pushed forward is like, how do we make this as efficient as possible for our customers? And then all they're seeing is a trusted but verifiable outcome. So it's going to say, hey, here's the trained unit that meets that requirement. Is that right? And we need to go through a lot of those iterations before that becomes like kind of true in the market. Because construction is very much in like, it can't be 80% right. and even ChatGPT is 80% right now. It needs to be 100% right, because like you're not going to rely on an AI interface to make steel selections or HVAC selections if it's 80% right, because you could screw up the entire building.
100%. Yeah, I think it would be nice to like AI still in its current state should be used as a helping hand, but not as
Yeah.
the final
Hmm.
help along the way. But
Yeah.
it's been incredible just to see though, since really Chat GPT went mainstream, like what that's been able
Yeah.
to do across the board for whatever industry you're in. Before I
Yeah,
let you
for
go,
sure.
Mike, real quick, last thing, um, you were kind of bringing this up as well. New revenue streams for general contractors.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways that they can add to those streams?
Yeah. So, if you're thinking about like, all right, what are the biggest expenses on a project, and breaking those costs into how to provide value. So if you look at like the stack of the cost of a project, going in, 40% of the cost of commercial construction project is materials and equipment. So you have 60% labor, 40% materials and equipment. And we're starting to see GCs explore all those different avenues. One is insurance. So, hey, can you provide your own SDI, subcontractor default insurance, as opposed to bonding a contractor? You can then create a revenue stream off that. You can start doing things like self-perform. So take on that 60% chunk of labor. And then the next logical piece for us and what we're seeing across the market is looking at materials and equipment. Our bet is on engineered equipment and engineered materials. So everything from HVAC systems to electrical gear down to engineered curtain walls. Things that are long lead time, things that are complex, things that have lots of parties involved, and also things that you would ship across country, across the world. We are staying very, very far away from anything that's commoditized. It's a very, very hard market to like try to sell drywall at scale when you can go down the street and pick up drywall that's the same as anywhere else in the country. But things like a chiller that has 7 manufactured in the United States that you'll send across country, there's value there. There's value in that chain. And really start looking and shifting through this lens of like, what is the outcome that I want to provide? How can I tie to that success? And that's what construction tech companies should do. They should go in and say, like, unless you succeed, we don't succeed. And then that helps and ties success and all of the different metrics that you want to that customer. And it makes that general contractor more successful, that contractor more successful. We're in a world where like there's going to be labor shortages for construction employees in the next 10, 15, 20 years. So what are the things that you can do to provide value to help alleviate those different pieces, and get people excited about construction, right? Like it's still one of the best industries in the world. My dad has skylines of every city he's worked in his office. You go into a city, he points out buildings that he worked in. That's consistent across the entire space. And it's a great industry to be in, and like people want to make it better, but you really have to like grind with them. You have to sit with them. You have to understand their pain points. And you can't just come in and say, hey, I'm going to create like the Amazon of construction, or I'm going to create the Stripe of construction. It just isn't like that. It needs to be, you need to build up these strong relationships with these people in order to provide value.
Well, Mike, I want to have you come back on and probably be on a panel because I feel like the conversation points that you bring up, and you do have a unique perspective on what's happening in the industry. I don't get the same responses from you, which is very, very welcoming. Um, so let's definitely stay in touch and have you come back on again and real
Yeah.
soon. But thank you so much for joining us here today, and we wish you the best of luck. And again, congrats on the latest funding.
Thank you, Jared. It was great chatting with you.